everybody for showing up to September's Open Studio visit. Last newsletter you received, I had given you a photograph of a painting that's up at the Chatham Creative Arts Center. And the whole premise of that was to paint big. And some people do paint large all the time. The largest I'd done is 18 by 24. So I decided to take on the challenge because I kept saying I was going to paint big. And by big, I meant to go bigger than what I had done in the past. For other people, that could be different sizes. If you paint little, going big may mean that you are just going to go from an 8 by 10 or a 9 by 12 up to an 11 by 14 or 12 by 16. So although I'm going to be talking about going much bigger than that, some of you may want to do it in increments if you decide that you do want to push yourself outside of some of the same old sizes that you use all the time. Now, for oil painters, acrylic painters, going big means something a little bit different because they can buy canvases and paint larger a little bit easier than pastelists. One of the issues that pastel painting has is that we need a surface that is going to remain flat and it's going to remain firm. And a couple of suggestions would be is one, you make your own boards. A lot of times that's what I do using the Gator board with gesso and layers of pumice ground. But you can also buy large full sheets of the different types of pastel papers and have them mounted or mount them, or buy them ready mounted. Either way, a lot of framing stores will do mounting. There are a few exceptions to that. And if you're a pastel matte fan like I am, they do have, I believe it is, you can't use the hot press or the hot mounting with it. It disrupts the surface. It says right in the description. So if you are going to bring it somewhere or try it on your own, just double check that the surface paper that you're going to try to mount can take whatever method you're going to use. The easiest thing to do, truthfully, is just to buy it ready mounted. They're going to do it the way it's intended, and you can get various larger sizes. Becomes a little bit more complex when you decide that you're going to do sizes that are outside the norm. Now I did a square. Squares are not outside the norm. Trying to get, a frame for a 24 by 24 was really not an issue. Now, if I was going to be doing something that was a little bit more unusual, 23 by a 32, something like that, you're going to be ordering custom frames. So those are some of the more logistical points of going big, is making sure you know your materials that you're going to be using, your surface that you're going to be using, but then also if it is something that you're going to wind up needing a frame for, or glass if you're pastel or watercolor, and having the right equipment to be able to do that. Any questions on just the basics of materials to get started?
Yeah, Betsy, it's Marianne.
Hi, Marianne.
Hi. So, and I don't have my visual because I'm munching and drinking.
Well, that's quite all right.
So I went a little big once, and I framed with glass, and it was very heavy. So, did you frame with glass, or did you go with that acrylic thing that's like glass and doesn't have
Right.
reflection
Yeah.
or whatever?
There's the 24 by 24 was not too heavy, so I was okay. I did get in touch with one of my artist friends, Maureen Spinali, and she's done some very large ones. I mean, there's quite a few people that have, but she's the person who, I contacted about, what does she do for the larger paintings. And some of it has to do with the frame also. So you want to make sure that your frame is actually, oh, good gosh, I wish I knew all the correct words to use, but it's the frame itself can handle the weight of glass when you get
Oh,
just
okay.
Okay. Um, I have not used the plexiglass, or the acrylic is what I believe they call it, framing acrylic. And one of the things that you have to bear in mind, and because I've not used it, I can't speak about it. I can tell you that pastel does actually, you have that difficulty with the static and pastel particles pulling off
Oh,
onto the
yeah,
acrylic.
right,
So that's something to bear in mind. So if unless you're going like really huge, uh, the glass should be okay. And I do use that water white AR-70, and I think they may have changed the name of it, but it's very much like well, it is a museum glass, but it's just not the price of museum glass. And there's some differences in terms of how the glass is actually coated. It's actually internally coated, not externally, which means you don't have to worry about scratching on the museum glass. You also have to worry about scratching the glass because one side that faces your painting has the museum film on it. Well, the museum glass film. And that scratches fairly easy. So that was always really tricky when I used that. But I'd check around, and if you really were going to go really big, like I did, like I talked to Maureen, I'd probably talk to somebody else again, including maybe Maureen, just to make sure that, I was doing it correctly. Or a framer. Framers are going to know right off the bat what is a framer that frames pastels will know.
right, right.
And there's a fabulous one up in the Mid Cape area. I don't use her because I'm at the other end. Who knows her name? Eileen Casey's used her. Quite a few people use her.
Oh, right, yes,
Oh,
I
it's
know I
Spang, Deborah Spang.
okay.
Sometimes, when you start talking, then you can remember. Debbie Spang up in, I believe she's Orleans area, maybe.
Yeah, I
If
think
you're
that's right.
interested, yeah, yeah. So she would absolutely, know. Down this neck of the woods, where I live, Mashpee area, they're really terrific over Woodruff's. They'd be able to give you some advice. Like I said, I haven't used any of the framers because I do it all myself. I order the frames pre-made, but yeah, the weight could make a difference. And just so you know up front, there are some shows that once you reach a certain size, they request that it is either shipped or delivered in acrylic, not in standard glass.
Oh, good
So
to
you do
know.
Betsy,
have to, a lot of extra things go along with that going big.
Thank you.
Okay, any other
Betsy,
questions?
what was the kind of glass that you said you used?
It used to be called water white AR-70, and
Okay,
it is a museum style glass.
okay,
I don't say
Lorian,
museum glass because there is a glass that is what it's called, museum glass. So this
right.
is very, very closely related to a museum glass, the non-reflective, the, UV filter, all those components exist with the AR-70. And I believe they also have an AR-90, and that one's probably even closer to a museum glass.
Okay. Betsy,
Okay.
Lorian Sojourny paints like 40-inch pastels, and she's a very approachable person, very
Oh, good. Yes,
generous
yes.
with her
Yeah, I know
knowledge.
Lori.
So,
Yes, she
yeah,
does.
if you really, she knows everything from how to ship it, how to frame
Perfect.
it, where to get the, so, if anyone needs her email, well, you know her, but she's
Yes, I
just
do. I do. Yeah.
and very generous with her time, so I'm sure she'd be happy to answer
Oh,
questions.
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I didn't think of her. Yes, I have her email, so I can get in touch with her right now, truthfully. I'm only gonna do large things that I know I can deliver in my car. Because of course, then I would need to have an even larger air float box than I have. The largest box that I have can take my 18 by 24, which costs a lot to ship to shows. But I do have it in air float. If you're ever planning on shipping, the air float boxes are by far the best
Yeah.
investment. You can use them multiple times and they really do protect your paintings. Okay, that could be another whole show. Anyway, okay, so I'm just going to take you through a little bit of the steps that you want to consider when you are going large, because the intention of this, besides the basics, the logistics, is how do you make a good design? Because sometimes things look really good on your sketch paper. Maybe you got an 8 by 10 sketch, maybe smaller, and when you exponentially make that larger, you need to take care of certain aspects of the composition and the design so it holds. And when I say holds, I mean it's really the painting works together in a uniform way from across the room and from up close. And that exists with every painting. But I found when I have done, let's say the 18 by 24s, that it's really far more of a balance because a large painting does capture attention, but you want that attention to be positive. You want that design element to be really strong so that that is an anchor to your large painting so that when people step forward, then maybe they'll see other things. The reality of the ones when I work on the board is I'm trying to get that real dramatic impact from a distance, but and this is what I love about painting. And then you get up close, because I'm doing it on the textured boards, there's lots of layers of colors. And you know what? I forgot to put myself on spotlight. So just a second. You can tell I haven't done this in 2 months. Hang on just a minute. There we go. Okay. Didn't get too far, so that's good. Okay, so I'm going to take you through some ways that you can do some quick little design patterns just so that you can get a feel for how that the underlying structure of your painting is going to lay out. And I'm going to show you quickly. Okay, so that was the photo. And the original photo had a lot more in it. And what I did was I took and I'm going to show you this app too. I took and I trimmed it down and I made it into a square. From the square, I did a value sketch, and I used the gray tone paper with the black and the white china markers. And there wasn't really a lot of what I would say is white in there, but there were light areas. And this painting really fell in really far more of the middle light end of the value scale. And I'll show you that in a minute. From this, then what I did is this is the pattern I'm talking about. This is the underlying, this is the little bit more of the details. That's got the actual objects. We can see like the, different components of the boat, the buoy on the side of the dock, the ropes. Over here, what I'm doing is I'm looking at what are these big shapes going to look like in a NOTAM. And you know that I do love using NOTAMs, because what happens is it does give you that real solid foundation for where are your dark and your light shapes. And that's what it is. It's all balance of dark and light shape. I can't say this is the most stellar example because I did it kind of quick, but that's the way it goes. Sometimes you do things quick. What I then did, this is I tried a whole load of different, because it's an underpainting of acrylic inks. So what I did is I used the original colors and I added other colors just to try to change it up, because I didn't want to have a solid color underneath. I wanted to have the feeling of, even if it's only going to show up in a few spots, the majority of the painting really falls in this turquoise range, which really is mixed with burnt umber and white for down here. Up here, it was mixed with a dark green. That's the dark green right there. And also with burnt umber. And that worked out really lovely in the reflection. So especially with the water, I was keeping that continuity of a base color and then, adding either lighter or darker other colors to change its overall effect. And then I used the raw sienna, and same again, I was using at this point oh, I didn't write it down, but at this point, I believe I was using a very light yellow with this. Oh, no, I was using a white. It says right there, white. And then that gave me a little underpainting. So I had an idea before I started even doing the pastel, how this was going to lay out color, but also value. So all of these, I was paying attention to the value that I wanted. And you can see very faintly, but I did color testing of the pastels that I was going to use actually on the painting, right on the value sketch. I mean, on the color study, which worked out well. So how did I get to that point where I was doing a painting and I was taking something that was like a little, I think that's a little 6 by 6 inch square, and it turned into a 24 by 24. Okay, I've got a photograph here, and this is one of the ones that I'm working on, that I'm starting to work on. If I hadn't been so busy, I would have had more done by the time tonight came around, but I don't know, it's just really busy. This is the full photograph, and I do like that photograph. You know, it works out nicely as a rectangle, your portrait format. You know, there's a lot of drama that's leading up into this. This over here is the metal dock. And this is just your regular floating dock that's back here. But what's happening is this is adding this lovely contrast with the dark area of the reflections that are happening within this painting. So this is really what drove me to say, oh, I would like to do this. It's really all this water. And I love boats, so this worked out well. This is not some, I'm gonna find, this to me feels like a corner, you know, those photo corners. Do I need to, let me move forward just a little bit. Because I feel like we're gonna, let me just move this. Okay. Forward.
And Betsy, this is a painting where you have to be very mindful of the frame because you would not want, like, you don't want to eat into like the tip of the boat. Like, I know you don't mat, but people who do mat, they have to be even more paying attention because you
Oh, yeah.
could really chop off something valuable, you know.
Yeah,
if you
absolutely.
just
But, and this is why, you know, and I find, yeah, absolutely, people that paint spontaneously, they get out there and they work everything out as they're painting. There's absolutely nothing the matter with doing that. It is not how my brain works. My brain works, and I've said this before, I like to plan things so that when I paint, I've got all that done, and I'm not married to that. I can just, you know, veer off from it. I can change things as I want, but I like starting with a foundation. But you're right. If this was wound up being framed, that'd even be more of a little photo corner there. Compositionally, is it doing anything? No. This little corner here is really, not necessary to the painting at all. So easy enough just to bring the dock over, you know, and this whole thing, this whole area would be dark, and then you've got the edge of the boat that's falling in here. Now, that worked out well. The tip of my pen just broke. Okay, so here we go. So we can just get rid of that and keep that right in there. And this clearly would be able to, you know, drawing wise, fill in. You know, I would always tell people, like, look up photographs online. I mean, if you have a part of a boat and you're missing the other part and you really want to have that boat in it, look up that style boat. Look up, see if you can find photographs. Go to the Getty Foundation photographs. They're all free photos, and you can have a look and see what is it that would help you. This one's really not bad. We're going to be able to figure out how that fits in. It's also going to be very close to the edge. So in terms of cropping the photograph, then it becomes, this is a lot of tight little detail that's happening up in the top here. Let me just move that up just a touch. Yeah, there's a lot of tight little detail that's happening up here. That I think could be very distracting. Well, again, I could extend that so that there's a little bit more of a dock, or I could crop that a little bit lower. And that's where design-wise, we start looking at things and we say, okay, what's necessary and what's not necessary. So if we look at that, the boats are definitely necessary and the reflections of the water. From there, I can then just decide how much. The other thing that's necessary in my eye is there are these lovely drooping ropes that are connecting the boats to, did I say boats? Ropes that are connecting the boats to the dock. And I love that sort of, it's like telephone poles in a painting. These ropes in these boat scenes are really an integral piece of, you know, how those boats are sitting there. So I would definitely make a point of keeping enough in so I could have these ropes, even like the knots and all that jazz. I love that sort of thing. So here we go. If we're gonna start with that and do it as a rectangle, I want to think about the really, really big shape. And the big shape that's happening here, and just give me just a moment, because of course I just broke my pen tip. I'm gonna go in and see if I can find another pen real quick. No. Okay. Okay, so let's draw this out real quick. I'll just do it in marker. Always telling people not to erase too much, so here we go. If I have this and I look at this, I say, okay, this measure down, that comes down to just about below the halfway mark. So I can just get this in. I'm just gonna drop everything a little bit. This nose comes up and I'm leave a little bit more of a space there. Okay, so let's see if giving a little bit of space in there creates something. And then I can drop that dock just down a little bit, giving me a little bit more. And then I have my dark area right in here. Oh my goodness. Then I've got that all through here, right along that edge. And then the darkness that comes in here. And I can come in, go through here, get these little shapes, got this lovely little squiggles in here, have it come down. And remember, this is not going to be exact to the photograph because I'm just in the planning stage. So once you get that planned out and I'm looking at it, now the question becomes, okay, if I step back and look at that, I've got a lot of light in there. Okay, and this area is connecting up here quite nicely. I think I could come in here. I don't want to have a tangent, so I'm going to drop that up just a little bit more there. I'm going to put that part into the dark zone right here. Okay, now it's working a little bit better. Okay, details. I'm not putting details in now. Having this space between, how did that space work? I'm not so sure that space worked. Let's see what happens if we do it over here. Okay, so why do I think that space doesn't work? Two things are happening. One, I don't really know what that looks like there. I'm going to take a wild guess that, you know, it cuts off on some sort of slant there, but I'm not actually positive. It also creates this really odd shape right in there. Getting a feel that that was not a smart move. So let's do this again, right here. Now I'm going to put it really close so those guys are touching. Okay, so that's going to work much better, just the way the original photo was. I'll bring this down. I brought that up. So design-wise, oh, I still have a lot of this space here. And I've dropped them down. Notice how much I've dropped them down in this sketch. Not really a great move. Make it just a little bit bigger. give me a little more space there. Remember, these are just sketches. You're just getting your ideas down. So you don't have to angst over things being perfect. I'm gonna look at this. This is a simplified way of doing a no-tan. If I'm doing a real no-tan, I'll do a value sketch first, and then I'll look at the value sketches and I'll decide, you know, which one falls in the dark or light zone. You know, I have this 3/4 formula that I use. But what we're doing is we're just saying, from a distance, are these light areas going to work standing all on their own, without details, without color, just in terms of black and white? So I think the one that when they're together, I like that little bit of tension that's happening there too. And let's just drop, I liked it when it was dropped down just a little bit further. And all these things tell me. So I got little notes. Okay, I want it to have a slate touch. Okay, a little bit of tension there, one boat on top of another. This one really created, it was this area right there. It was a nice connection for this side of the boat. I think it looks it just looks as if I just don't know what I'm doing, of which actually, I'll be quite honest, I really don't. I think I actually did it too high. I think it probably is lower. This elongated section here looks really good. I do like that. Okay, got this in here. Now, when I say dark to light, this is what I'm talking about here. Okay. This, now this one here, I punched my own holes in it because I can take and I can lie it up and I can look through and I can see which one by looking through the hole. You know, they all come different ways, but if you have one that doesn't have holes in it, put holes in it so you can just lie it down. So if I go over here and I look at this water, I'm seeing the water. It looks really light through these holes. See that? So that tells me, and can you see that? Is it close enough for you guys to see that?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, perfect. So that tells me that this end, it's not this dark, clearly we can see that, but I'm going to state the obvious. I'm moving down here. Oops, still a little bit. This one here looks the closest because look what happens here. It starts to look dark. See how dark it starts looking? This is all the same color. Isn't that really interesting? That when you isolate it away, when it's surrounded by light, it looks really dark. When it's surrounded by dark, it looks light. So right around this area here, and if I had to take a guess, I'd go with this one. That one looks pretty close too. So either way, it's pretty much dead set in the middle. So especially when something falls in the middle, I can say, do I want this to have a light appearance or do I want to have it have a dark appearance? And I'm going to show you what happens with these two. If I wanted this to be darker, this is going to help you decide what to do with the color of your shapes, the value of your shapes. Sorry about that. Color and value go together, but we're talking value. Okay, this one I already didn't like this, so I'm going to do it on here. If I decided that I wanted this water to look darker rather than lighter, then it could take on the dark appearance and I could cover this all in. And as soon as I started doing that, we're going to pretend I did a really good job coloring this in, okay? We've lost the design that's there. See that? Even if this was a lot darker, we've lost that really strong appearance that happens over here. So what you want to do is you want to think in terms of how much do I want?
Betsy, I don't know if it's happening to anybody else, but my image keeps freezing.
Oh, is anybody else's image freezing?
No.
No.
Okay.
Nope.
Unfortunately, it sounds
Nope,
like it's
you.
yours. Yeah, sorry about that. If it freezes too much and it becomes annoying, you know, this is being recorded, so you know you're gonna get the recording, okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
Betsy, I have a question. So like, so far you necessary, maybe I missed it, stated that because you're painting big, there might be a different decision, like for example, you need more, I'm just making this up, more distinct value shifts when you go big. I totally made that up.
Yeah, yeah, that is what I'm talking about. It's that initial underlying value shapes that you're making, the design patterns of the values. And I've
Yeah, no, I
broken this
meant, but
down
because you're
into, sorry?
going bigger, does it have to, is there additional considerations because it's a big painting versus something little?
Well, I think what happens is the larger a painting gets, this shape right here is what, probably like 2 inches by 5 inches. Okay, on a bigger painting, that could wind up being, even doubled it and be 4 by 12, tripled it. All of a sudden, this shape becomes very big. So you want to make sure that as the shapes work small, if they work small, they will
Got
work
it.
larger. But
Yeah.
you really need to pay attention to that underlining notan of which is your balance of lights and darks. And when I say lights and darks, I'm not saying that everything stays the same level of light. There's your middle right there. It could be a variety of lights. It could be a variety of darks, but that you've really made a real firm decision that you want this area here to definitely be noticeably darker than that area there. Okay. Or you could say, I want it to be more subtle. Well, then that's fine. But the reality of it is, if this is what has attracted you in here, this shape, the closer you get to that value, the less that shape is going to show up. And that's where that from a distance, even in the photograph, look at how light that is in the photograph. It's not light like this, or even like that, but it is light. It doesn't mean you can't have areas when you start like getting some of the very subtle wave action that's happening in here that go a little bit dark, but its base would remain on the lighter end. Not here. It could wind up being right here, but next to reflections that are right there, that's going to stand out. Those, if I'm using, let's say, that one and that one, it's going to stand out. If I use this and this, less so. If I use this down here, I'm going really super light, and that's not gonna work because you're going to be adding so many colors on top of it, or values, I should say, on top of it. So with this, did that answer your question, Deb, Lisa? Okay, so the idea in here is
Sorry, it
making
takes me a while to find
foundation
how to unmute. Yes-ish. I mean, I have 1,000 questions, but you may answer all of them, so I'm not going to ask them until
Okay,
you're
yeah, no,
partway
fair
through
enough,
it.
yeah, so
Because
as
I'll
we're going
just say,
along.
like, I've always had this myth that painting big would mean it's okay to have more detail. Like, my nervousness around painting big is that the painting is going to look boring.
Oh,
And
no.
a painting with like Zippo detail. You basically have two boats, a shadow, water, and that's it. So I'm curious
Right,
to
and
see
the
how
reality
it
of it
goes.
is I'm taking it from the point of view of what it is that I typically paint and how I typically paint. And I put a variety of objects in paintings depending on, what scene, if it's plein air or photo reference that I'm using, what I want to keep in and what I want to take out. But personally, I think a lot of times in going big does not mean you add more or that you add more objects or more detail. It means that what you're doing is you're taking a space and you're filling it with a design pattern that is, I mean, there's a real drama to this design pattern that's right there, that's coming across. Now, granted, I would firm some of this up, but you don't want to have well, I shouldn't say you don't want to have, that's not right, because I'm talking about what I want. Somebody out there might say, I like a lot of detail. Well, that's fine, have a lot of detail. I don't want to put a lot of detail in here. So I'm going to be able to decide in here, where do I want my detail? So let me just go right into that. So you can see here, value shift. I'm going to keep this. I'm going to keep this really working with dark and light just to start with is great. Okay. There's this lovely pattern, and this is what I've got. I've got this stuff that's happening in here, and I've got this comes a little further. Ooh, that's going to look really nice. Where am I going to put my detail? I'm going to put my detail in this area right here. Okay, this one does not have a lot of detail in it.
Hey Betsy, it's Deborah. What are you saying creates the tension beside that thumbnail particularly?
Oh, because these guys are kissing. They're like really close. Okay, so rather
what
than
is it?
having one curve, there's hardly any space here. Here.
Okay.
Okay, I had a bigger space. I can't say I'm actually going to have them touching. But I will probably have
I see.
a little bit more like that. See that little, so the little bit of tension's going on there. They're gonna
Uh-huh.
bump into each other any second now. You know, here they are touching. Okay, here it's a little too wide. There's like, I don't know. I like the idea of the two boats being so close together that they're almost touching. Let me get in there and just make that a little bit more obvious so you can see it, but not big like that. They look like they're just resting there. I like the connection between the two.
Thank you.
So once I've got these big shapes in here, okay, and I've decided, no, I really want there to be a distinct difference. So I'm going to be really conscious of the value that I put here. And I know I want the detail here. Do I want the same amount of detail in both boats? No, I really want it in this. So what's happened in this composition that I have here? This is really good because I haven't drawn this one yet. So here we go. Look at this. If this is my middle here, middle here, middle here, this boat here, this is kind of like falling in like a little kind of an awkward section of the painting. It's almost falling right in the middle. So this is where I would slide everything slightly over. Okay, so I'd take these boats, I'd slide them over. So this detail here starts to fall more in this upper third area right here. Okay, so when I would redraw this again, and I would then say, okay, that detail, it's like sitting too close over there. I can get that boat a little bit more of an angle the way that is, but I'm going to want that detail maybe to fall here. When I redraw it, maybe, ooh, yeah, I could shift it that way. I could have the detail here. So like there's all these different ways I could draw it. So I could take, let me just use a sheet of paper and cover up part of that. So I could take, I don't ever work from a photo. This is the original photo. I never work from a photograph and keep it exactly the way it is. I crop. Okay. I could crop over there. That gets this falling a little bit more over in this section because I'm kind of thinking of that rule of thirds. You've all heard of that before. Within a format, we break the 3 equal parts this way. And then we do, whoops, that's not really quite 3. We're all going to pretend that's 3. It doesn't look it though. Okay, 3 this way. Where those lines intersect are natural focal points. Now, you notice I put a big circle around it because it's not actually on the dot, okay? It's a rough idea. And that's what I was thinking. Oh, I could get this to fall a little bit more over in the third right here. And I'm thinking, geez, I wonder if it would fall in the third here. Well, what's going to happen is I'm going to need a counterbalance.
You look like you're ready for Monty Python.
Are you talking to me?
No, sorry.
Oh, okay. Because I do know Monty Python. I didn't know I was going that wacky, but that's okay. You know, so that's what I'm thinking of. Does this detail that I want, and maybe I don't want all that detail, but some of it, do I want it to fall on this side or do I want it to fall on this side? Another thing that from a distance, this large painting, I don't want the detail to wind up jumping out in an area that's going to be like ho hum boring. I really want it to be, you know, have a little bit of a you know, a strong design to it so that, you know, you want to walk up and you want. So I left off just talking about, so this is even more important, okay? Because this design element of where you're going to have your details show up, you don't want to have it plunk in the center. You want to make sure that you've got this all positioned. Again, larger paintings, there's going to be more drama to just the sides of it. So you want to make sure that you have really thought through where are the details. So my details are really going to be mostly in this boat, and I'm really kind of thinking that I'm gonna push it a little bit this way, give a little bit more water on this side. Notice what's happening? I just keep drawing around this. I'm getting, so now I have more over here. I like this style of thinking because, of course, I have this too close if I wanted more space. I'm rapidly approaching another square by giving myself more space over here. Okay. I've got this, I've got that there, got that there. Okay, and if that's going to be let me see what this is going to look like with a square. I am going to actually take this out. So if that is roughly a 6, and I'm going to come down roughly a 6. Oh my gosh, look at this. That was the original line. It's going to work better as a square. See how I got there? See how I got that the square? Started with the regular. Decided that what's happening here is I need to shift this boat farther over here. Looks fine in the photograph, that's okay. But for my painting, I really want this detail to be shifted over past that halfway mark, which is going to be more about here now. Falling in this upper quarter quadrant with this falling in roughly the third. And this guy right here, that's going to be, there's a little detail here, but this area right here, that's the one where I'm thinking, get that light that's hitting or the shadow that's underneath it, the fact that, you know, we see this underneath and it's coming above. So I'm going to go with a square. Okay, and these guys are going to be farther over here. This is going to come down. Oops, I did that too high. I'll tell you, these little sketches are great. Let's give this guy a little bit more of an angle that way. So he crosses that midline, which is back to the way the angle of that boat as opposed to mine. I had him up a little bit farther. So I'll have to pay attention to that. So I have to pay attention to the boat. To boat angle. Okay, square. Now, look at this. Okay, virtually broke that in half. So as I do that, I have to make a point. I do not want this on a diagonal. I'm down. Ooh, there we go. Maybe I am going to have to push that over. I'll tell you, moving in, I probably drew that too small anyway. Probably goes over there. Where's my white? 1. No, second. Go over here. I tell you, trying to resolve issues, especially on something big, before you actually get going, is going to make such a big difference. Bring them down a little bit, but I'm gonna think I might do it as a square. Long as I can get rid of this angle here. If I can't get rid of this angle, by the way, and what I'm talking about, yeah, I like diagonals, okay, but I don't want a diagonal where half of it is the boats and the shadows, and the other half of it is a little bit of the shadows and the water. I don't want it half and half. This one here is not half and half, okay? If I drew that straight line, it's actually over. So that's going to come about, more when I finesse a design, a drawing. Because this is just the ideas. I'm getting the ideas down. So a couple of things I could do with the drawing. Okay, I draw a lot, drawing freehand. I like drawing freehand. But what I found was when I was drawing the last one, the sheer size of these boats, drawing them as, let's say this is roughly, an 8x10. Drawing the size of this boat, it's a little bit different than if I've now drawing these boats 3 or 4 times larger than they were. So what I use is this. And if you've taken the pet portrait workshops with me, you've seen this before. This app, and it's called the Grid Maker for Drawing. And there's all different apps out there. They're wonderful to help you get your proportions right. Because, well, I want my proportions to be correct, okay? Because I am a representational artist. I'm certainly not realism, but I do like my objects to have that representational quality. If you're going for something that's a little bit more abstract, maybe it's not as important, but I do want the proportions of the boats to one another, the boats to the objects that are in there, and the structure of the actual boats. So what, oh, let's see, I did do one. And I did one for both a rectangle and I did one for a square. Okay, so what happens is you upload the photograph into this Grid Maker app, and you can decide how many squares you want on a vertical and how many squares you want on a horizontal. And I'm fine with math, but I like making things easy for myself. So if I'm doing another 24 by 24, in this case, I made this all 12s. I made this 12 here and 12 here, which means that these are 1-inch squares in the grid. And I just need to, on my board that will be 24 by 24, I need to make a grid of 2x2s because they're twice as big, and I would still then have 12. What that does is that gives you, you can see it on there, it gives you the sizing so that you can determine how far into the painting, so let's say if I was going to be drawing this boat here, I know it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 squares down, and it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 squares in. So the grid can help for a very detailed drawing. If you can draw it freehand, that's fine, but for any time you need to have something that can guide you for those proportions and getting it a little bit more representational, look on your phone, see what apps. There might be something that's already there, part of something you've already downloaded for drawing, or you could try this Grid Maker for drawing. Now, I'm not promoting that, partly because what drives me nuts is the number of ads that are on it. It's really nutty. I just upload a photograph, I get my the way I want it, and then I get out of the app. I don't use it for any duration at all. And I'd say probably, well, this is the first time I've used it in like ages. The majority of my paintings I don't, but going larger, I knew I wanted to be able to get, like I said, those proportions correct, and I wanted it to fall within the painting correctly. So I used the app, and let's see if I have that one. Oh, nope, I don't have the one that. Here's the one that I had. Hang on a second. Okay, I must have moved it, but I did have one for the painting that's up in chat. Oh, yeah, here it is. Okay, you can see that I did change things around. I did not add the pylon that was there. I moved things around a little bit. I did not have the knot down here with the rope or this other little section there. So like I said, the photograph is just a jumping off point. It's not the end result. I'm not copying it totally. So bottom line is what you want to do is you want to set up a very strong composition. Look at NOTAMs. They're a wonderful way of really getting a very dramatic, dynamic, very clear idea of where your lights and your darks stand. From there, what I would be doing is redrawing this. I do a value sketch so that I would know really how light or dark do I really want this area to be. I know I want it to fall within that light to middle range. I don't want it to go dark over here. So I can work on value sketches and start getting variations in here. Still relying on that light and dark. And you want to step away. You want to look at it from a distance. You want to actually say, where do I need to have detail? Where can I do without detail? And when I say detail, I mean detail that jumps out from across the room, as opposed to, I could have a lot of detail in here, but I'm going to have similar values in here so that it's not really obviously from across the room. In here, I'm going to want to show a little bit more detail, because what I want to do is to be able to really use these shapes that are inside this boat as part of a draw in to see what's in the boat. Questions now on going big. Can you see yourself doing this? Is there any sort of a pitfall to it? Is there something that you don't quite understand? Would you want to, any way I can elaborate on this?
I think it's a mental thing, like my mistakes will be magnified if I paint small. They're not as obvious.
Can you say that again?
I say it's kind of a psychological thing. If I paint big, my mistakes will be magnified and people will see them.
Right.
If I
Yeah,
paint
yeah.
small,
Yeah.
no
So
one's
that's why
really going to notice.
sort out some of those things that could potentially be mistakes, in a drawing level. I mean, it doesn't mean that everything's going to potentially go smoothly, but I mean, if you have that really strong, composition design that's really based on that balance of the lights and darks, and you know where your different values are going to fall, that's going to be the majority of it, because that's what's going to,
Yeah.
pull people in or not.
Yeah, I mean, I've been looking at, it also helps to look at a lot of bigger stuff, which pastel artists don't tend to do. There's a few that do. Like Richard Suckling tends to paint big, Laurie and Journey, but a lot of people don't. It's helpful to see examples. You
Oh,
certainly
yes,
see them in like the
absolutely.
oil, the
I mean,
acrylic world.
yeah, and one of
Yeah.
the things that, kind of doesn't give us a real feel for that is we see a lot on, our laptops or our phones.
Yeah,
So we are restricting ourselves in the amount of
exactly. That's why it's good to go
with the
see art
size
in
you
person.
actually see.
Yeah.
So if you, can get to any shows, the Chatham one right now, everything in it is big. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
fabulous painting up there. I can't remember who it's by. That's got to be 6 feet tall. I mean, it's
What was
just
the size of your painting at the Blue Ribbon Show, Betsy? That seemed pretty good sized. The size of your painting at the Ribbon Show at Cape Cod Art.
Yep.
The BEO, that seemed biggish, same with Eileen's, or maybe they were 12 by 12s or something.
Yeah, mine at the Blue Ribbon show is just I think it's a 12 by 16 or an 11 by 14.
Okay.
It's
Yeah, for some people that would be
But again,
bigger.
it's relative. If you
Yeah.
really do only, paint 8 by 10 and 9 by 12,
Yeah.
just take the next step up.
Exactly.
You don't have to go from that to a, 24 by 36 or something. Do it gradual. I mean, if you feel like taking the leap, then great. Jump from an 8 by 10. Oh, that's the other thing that you should, okay. Wow, is that proportion wheel. Where's my proportion wheel? Of course, like I have 10 million of them. It's that I can. The proportion wheel is fabulous. Just a second, let me get that. Any questions while I'm finding my proportion wheel? Any comments? Can people see themselves going big, getting that design? Okay, no. Anyway, the proportion wheel actually will take you through. I know I've done it, used it in other demos that I've done, where architects use it, designers use it, where you can actually set up this little wheel. So I have an 8 by 10 and it tells me all the sizes that are proportional to that. So right off the bat, we know an 8 by 10 is proportional to a 16 by 20, okay? Because, an 8 by 10, twice the size of that is 16 by 20. So you can use just very simple math to be able to figure out proportional. And that's why, coming in here, the next step is going to be, am I doing this as a 24 by 24? Am I going to try 24 by 30? I was leaning towards this square, but, I'll go back in, I'll do some more sketching and I'll see if I really do need that length to kind of break up diagonal in half. But yeah, proportions will make a huge difference as you're getting bigger and bigger. I'll take a photo.
You also do go through.
Oh, here I found it.
You also go through tons of pastel. Like if you did like Giraud with on sanded paper like you are, and there would be nothing left of the pastel by the time you finish.
All right, well, that's another reason to use, that's why I use acrylic ink underneath.
Yeah,
So that
exactly.
I have a base layer of a paint underneath for my pastel.
If you underpainted the whole thing in pastel, you'd go through.
You would, yeah, and it'd be wise. Here's another tip. Another reason why I like the acrylic inks, and you guys have heard this before, is acrylic ink, if you mess up, you bring it to the same, okay, you put the acrylic ink down, you put pastel on top of it, you mess up, you bring it back to the sink, you hose off the section that didn't work, that had the pastel on it, and the acrylic ink is not, it does not, what's the word I'm trying to think of? It's resistant to water. So you do not wash away your acrylic ink. So that's a reason that I do like using the acrylic inks. Also, I just love the high chroma of a lot of the color. It's nice underneath it. So this is the proportion wheel. Okay. So with the proportion wheel, that's it. I have, let's say I have a 9, well, let's just take an odd one. Let's take a 10 by 13. I just line up the 10 with the 13 and it shows me all the sizes that are compatible. So if I want to go big, it's actually a 20 by a 25.25, it looks like right there. And if I want to go super, super big, I could go 25 and that looks as though it would wind up being like a 32. So this will tell you exactly how you can blow your image up. So besides using an app to help you keep things proportionally drawn, this will help you keep things proportional. This is perfect for anything. Going from a little tiny sketch to something that's actually not as large as this. So bear that in mind. Anything else? Okay, so I guess it's going to be a surprise what I wound up doing because all this did was help me identify that I have to be really careful about that side angle of having a split half and half. And I'm going to maybe maneuver those boats around. So I guess a little more sketching and I'll figure out whether it will be a square, which I still am leaning towards, but I really did like the way that that water came down. And I could do two different ways too. But I think I'm gonna start with one painting and take it from there. And I'll do it on my board and use acrylic ink underneath, and then I'll put the pastel on top.
Thanks.
Okay.
This was great. Thanks.
So we'll, beginning of October, I'm not sure whether I'll be doing, you know, trying to do the paint alongs, and I've got a couple other ideas I want to do. Uh, my son is getting married, you know, our son is getting
Oh,
2 weeks, so.
congratulations.
Yes, I know, we're very excited. So it's kind of put some of the things that I normally would have done, you know, on hold. But thank
That's
you everybody
okay.
for coming. Appreciate it.
you.
It's always great
Thank you very
to
much, Betsy.
share. And feel free to get in touch if you have any questions. And hopefully that did help answer how you can just go in bigger.
Thank you, Betsy.
Betsy.
Thanks
Okay.
a lot.
Thank you
Bye.
so much. Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.